Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's first in the series of a four-part webinar where we're talking about immediate response activities. What I can ask you is, can you please mute your microphones? If you do have a question, we have Nicole Winnie, who is going to ably assist us with monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions as we go through the webinar today, please type them in the chat and we will answer them at the transition of every slide. And then also we're going to have a period of time at the end of the webinar where we're going to cover any points that we might have missed. Okay, fantastic. So everybody hear me and everybody see the screen or the initial slide. You can say yes, you can put a thumbs up, whatever you feel like. Oh, perfect. All right. Okay, there's a couple of hands up. Is that questions or is that yes, I can see your slide? I'm going to take it as yes, I can see your slide. Okay, fantastic. All right, then. And away we go. So good morning again, and welcome to the first in this series of webinars. My name's Tristan Barston. I am a Principal Preparedness Solutions Advisor based in Houston, Texas. As you can tell by my strong Texas accent, I'm not originally from here. I was based in the UK. I was military for many years, both in the British and American militaries. And then I've been part of OSRL response for the past almost 18 years, initially as a responder. And then following on from that, I'm involved in the preparedness aspect of what we do. So a lot of member engagement, a lot of drills, a lot of exercises, a lot of supporting clients around the world to make sure that we are as prepared for all spills as possible. And as part of that, you see good practices with members and clients, and then possibly not so good practices. And that's what we're going to discuss today. Now, helping me today, it's not just me. I have my colleague, Bill Humpheyrs. Bill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Humpheyrs. I'm one of the senior response specialists out of our base in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I come from a background for having marine biology background, working in different environments and education and such. I've been with OSRL for over 5.5 years now, working on many different spills around the world, from Sri Lanka, working on a beach master with clients, all the way up to working down in Peru, working with the government and liaison between the responsible party and government officials, workers in the field, and everything. I also have traveled for doing preparedness trainings with our clients and membership, and have run our maintenance stuff here in the US, maintaining our equipment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Bill. And then you won't be able to see her, but like I said, Nicole Winnie is supporting us on this webinar, and she's going to be keeping Bill and I in line to make sure that we don't go off-piste too much. All right, then. So let's make a start. So what are our objectives for this series of webinars? So what we're looking at is what actions need to be carried out and are carried out in the vast majority of cases when an oil spill incident happens. And we're not just thinking about the major, the tier 3, the big international spills that make the news. We're also going to be looking at the smaller operational spills, because a big thing of what we found is if you manage those small spills effectively, you respond effectively, you deal with them, you follow the processes, then when something larger happens, then you are already have that knowledge, have that experience to just maximize your response. And then secondly, if you handle the small spills well, it's less likely that you have those larger incidents. So with this first webinar, what we're looking at, are the first three actions that we undertake. So the incident occurs, and what we're going to do, we're going to raise the alarm and make that initial assessment, trying to find out what's happened and what it is that we've got to do right now. Key to that is this making the primary notifications, the who we're notifying, why we're notifying them, what information they need, and what they are going to do with that information. And then we're going to do a quick dive into mobilizing response resources. So what do we have immediately available to us on site? And who else could we call in to support and help us? All right. So the first one of those boxes, the raising the alarm and the initial assessment. So what is it that we need to do first? Okay, so there is a number of steps that we've condensed down into 5 areas. Bill, please forgive me. I've totally blanked on our discussion earlier. Are you doing this slide or am I doing this slide? I'm doing this slide and you're doing the form, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I don't want to tread on anybody's toes. Those of you who know me know I love the sound of my own voice and will quite happily talk until the end of time. Okay, so raising the alarm, initial assessment. Safety is important throughout our everyday operations, but especially when we respond to incidents and emergency incidents. We want to ensure that whatever impact results from that emergency, we minimize the negative impact as much as possible, and we keep anybody who is responding or in the area as safe as possible. So the first thing that we need to do on the detection or the discovery that there is an incident or there is a strong potential that something could go wrong is we need to verbally warn the personnel in that immediate area. And if they don't need to be there, we make sure that we move them to somewhere safe. And I'm sure everybody is aware that this isn't a groundbreaking idea. If you think about all the emergencies that we respond to, if it's fire, if it's medical, if it's civil unrest, we still follow these steps, and oil spills are no different. So we want to raise that alarm. We want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is what has happened or has the potential to happen. And we want to make sure that the people who don't need to be there are moved to somewhere safe. And if we are undertaking an operation, whether it's a loading operation, whether it's vehicle transportation, whether it's drilling, whether it's pumping, whatever we're doing, we need to bring that operation to an immediate stop. A couple of times we've responded to incidents where something has started to happen. A flange has started to leak, a pipe has started to bulge. And whoever is in charge of the operation or monitoring the operation has thought, you know what, I've only got 100 barrels left to pump. I've only got 5 minutes left of this operation. I'll be okay. And of course, they're not. When we do the assessment after the action, so the after action review, it's always, you talk to your managers, you talk to the shift supervisors, they would much rather there's a stop for 5 minutes where we prevent something happening than we try and muddle our way through and something happens that we have to respond to. So bringing that operation to an immediate stop around us. And then we do that situational awareness, that snapshot where we look around us. People are our priority, keeping people safe. So we need to identify, has anybody been injured now? Or are there hazards in our area that people need to be aware of? So we need to look around us, see where we are, the location. And not just the location. Obviously, we know where we are in every given day, but is there bad weather coming in? Is there something happening that's going to mean that our operation is going to have challenges when we respond to it? So that initial assessment, that looking around us, identifying those hazards. Are there ignition sources? And I don't just mean are people smoking, I mean are vehicles running, are their engines running? Is there something welding activities going on? Is there something that we need to be aware of? And then the quantification of the incident itself, the nature of the incident. Is it a vehicle collision? Is it a pipe rupture? If we know the type of product that's been spilt, that is important for us to know. And a lot of our operations, we have SDS sheets available to us. So we know if it's gasoline, if it's diesel, if it's heavy fuel oil, if it's crude oil, that will impact how we respond to it. So this is all essential information that we're gathering. And then there's the amount of product spilt or size of impacted area. And again, this is a very interesting topic. A lot of organizations that we work for have reporting standards. So if you have a spill of, let's say, 50 litres or less, then there is a different way that you report that incident. And what we've noticed in companies that implement this, all of a sudden, the spills that they have are 35 litres. They just creep in underneath that 50, that magic mark, so they don't have to make the notifications, even though they have vastly underestimated the amount of products spilt. So rather than relying on that, another way we do is the size of impacted area. So how far away has that oil got from us? If we're working on a river, for example, and the current is running at 4 knots, we know that in 30 minutes, even in 15 minutes, that product is now a mile away down that river. So the size of the impacted area, even though we might have spilt a relatively small amount of product, the area that it's impacted is vast. And then we've got the alerting and warning. So this is different from the detection and discovery element where we're verbally telling people around us. Now we're letting everybody know in our operation that this has happened. This is the alarms, and this is the reporting using the chain of command procedures. So you're telling your shift supervisor or team leader. The team leader is telling the operations manager. The operations manager then, if needed, is making other notifications and other calls. But again, this has already been defined and developed at your facility, in your plans, your response plans. So we're just following the procedures, making sure that we are following what it is we want to do, we need to do. And then last but not least, finally, we get to the actually responding to the incident, dealing with the incident after these notifications, after we've made an assessment and alerted people to the fact that there is this incident. Finally, now we're getting to the response where we're going to respond to the incident or contact our response team, emergency response team, to come in and assist. So as we can see, there is steps that we go through when we have an incident or the potential of an incident. And it's very important for us to practice these steps in our everyday operations. And through that, we have a number of tools that we use that can assist. And the first one is the oil spill reporting form. And Bill, I believe this is you.
So when it comes to oil spill reporting, it's making sure that we gather the information as it comes into the field. Not every fill spot on this document needs to necessarily be filled. As things get reported in, they can get filled in. So it's more of getting things down and recorded as they come in, so that way we can track everything going on. This tells us when it's being reported, the time and date of the location, what kind of response needs to be there. Is it something as of a notification of like something may be a potential, or are we looking at something critical to failure? Then we're going to look into where the location of the incident is now occurring. Is this occurring in the facility? Is this a break in the pipeline outside into an area of concern? Is there any contact? Who's reporting the source? And then we'll go into this main specifics of the incident. And we're now looking at impacted area, an estimate of that volume. And as Tristan's already stated, that volume may be small, but it could be moving fast through an area of drainage. Has this been stopped? Is it still a continuous release, and is it still pumping out? How does that need to be taken? And then if any current actions are being taken. But mostly on the end, it's going to be also of who's reporting this information and their number, so that way they can be called back for any information. And of course, all this stuff is happening in real time. And as it goes in, things might change, estimates may change, impacted areas could also change as we go through. So this is making sure that we are being very flexible, as it could be an increase, it could be an over or underestimation, but we want to make sure that we're responding with prudence up front.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bill. And you raise a really good point there in the fact that initially, when we're completing this document, it's highly likely that we do not have all the information that we need to fill out this document. And that's okay. One of the things that helps us to do is we can use this document to make these primary notifications, but then also we can say, we will update you at this time. And it sets expectations for the people that we are communicating to, that to the best of our ability, we are managing the incident right now, but in 30 minutes, in 60 minutes, in 90 minutes, whatever time frame we are, we will come back to you with further details. And it allows us to put people on standby. Oil spills happen at the most inconvenient times. I'm sure Bill has 140 stories about the time he's been woken up at 3 a.m. to go to Miami Airport to fly out for an incident. What really helps us is this notification coming through so we can prepare, we can get things ready. So in 90 minutes, we know, right, it's go time, or we stand down, or we get put on further standby. Okay, could I just ask everybody to make sure that their microphones are muted, please? That would be great. Okay, the next step is making the primary notifications. And before we go into this section, one of the things that we've noticed when it comes to incidents, any type of incidents, but especially oil spills, the response and the management of emergency incidents lives or dies by the way that incident is communicated within the organization and communicated externally, whether it be to contractors, whether it be to support staff, whether it's the media, the local population, whoever it is. But communication is key. You get that right straight from the start, and no response. It is easy, but it makes your life a lot simpler. And there are a number of ways that we've identified that helps this. In the plans that we develop, in the plans that we help to develop, we put these tables in. And these tables cover these 4 main points when it comes to notification. It's important for us, first of all, in our role, to know who we have to notify. So there's this clear chain of command that we can follow to make sure that the people who need to be notified are notified. The people that don't need to be notified aren't. And I'm sure everybody on this call here today knows that when an incident happens, there are going to be 10 people who need to know, and there's going to be 90 people who want to know. But during these initial response actions, this initial response time that we're talking about, we haven't got time to go and have, cups of tea and coffee with people and tell them, about the things that happened. We're busy. So we just need to notify the people who need to know. So who are we notifying? In your particular role, who do you need to talk to? Tied on to that, how are you notifying them? Is this verbally, in person, face to face? Is this through a network such as alarms, radios, telephones, where we're doing a mass notification? Do they require a written report? Either that's a policy, an internal policy, or if we're working with regulators or other government agencies, do they have a report that needs to be completed? And tied into that, is there a time that this report needs to be completed by? And then I can't stress the importance of this fourth point. How will you confirm that they have received the information? If you've just got an email, and this is especially relevant when it comes to some regulators and government departments, you might just have an email. What are you going to do? You're going to fill in your form and send it off onto the World Wide Web and hope for the best? That's kind of like wrapping it in a bottle and sealing the top and throwing it into the sea and hoping that it gets there. It's really important for us to build relationships with our regulators, with the people we're communicating with beforehand. So we have the ability and that knowledge that if we send them an email, that if they read it, they will reply to us. So we can confirm that they have received that information. Because one of the things that we don't want to do, absolutely don't want to do in life, and especially in emergency response, is make assumptions, because the assumptions will kill us. Moving on from that, we need to know, what information do they require? How is it going to impact what they do? So do they need to know, for example, the nature of the incident, the time, the location, the type of product spill, and the size of the product, or the size of the impacted area? And again, we do this by doing that relationship building prior to an incident. We understand this last point, what we expect them to do with that information. So we expect them to do things given the information that we give them. And that's the key. That's the key, is making sure that not only have they received the information that we're giving them, but they are acting on it. And drills and exercises are a perfect opportunity for us to practice this. We don't want to wait until there is an incident. We need to practice this as much as possible. And again, all spill response, we have a tool to help us do that. And Bill's going to talk about the procedure and actions on notifying OSRL, what you need to give us and what we would do with that information. Bill.
So as it comes to the notification process for OSRL and everything we go through, it is a 24-hour staff phone line. You can call any of the numbers on the screen. It reaches any of their main mobilizing bases around the world. You'll be connected either immediately to a duty manager, or with the 10 minutes be called back by a duty manager who can walk you through everything that's going on. And this can be anything from just a notification of, hey, there was an incident. We just want to let you guys know if we need your help, we'll call back. And it could just be a 5-minute call with us to let us know. And as always, we'll be receptive via email, text, and everything coming through for it. I will try to gather as much information as we can from you at the time. And as I stated before, you will not have all the information you want in the beginning, But as things progress and as more information comes from the incident site, it can be fed back into us and we can help you better direct you things and also establish our emergency operations center on the backside. Many times I've been called into the office and gone and established and this gathering basic information on stuff in case we need to go somewhere and help through in a situation. Also, as part of individual memberships, is being access to Geomatics team, which can run modeling software for us, and to be able to predict models for any movement for offshore, where it has the most reliability. And also, as it goes through, we talked about the different actions that can be required through different impacts of needing for dispersant spray aircraft, working through wildlife incidences, subsea incidences. Do you need a capping stack or other items mobilized to help you get through, and also that media regulations, because part of everything else is also talking through repair your assets and also your reputational damage, making sure that everything can be helped out through the process of a response. And as we said, we're there for as much as you need us. If you just want to call, talk to us, make sure it sounds resound, more than happy to sit on a phone call and talk to you guys throughout the day. But also, if you want us through and come down the country, it's more than happy to have us come down. We love to travel, and it's wonderful experiences. Good to see everything else, but also it gives us the more better established relations with everyone face to face.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Bill. And I think it's really important to note that anybody within your organization can call all spill response. You don't have to have an incident. It could be a general oil spill preparedness question. It could be something that you want to have more knowledge on, for example, the use of dispersants. Please build that relationship with our duty managers. Understand what kind of support we can give you. And if you are a member and you do have an incident of any size or scale, please call us. We've had vast experience in the past 40 something years responding to different scales, different types of oil spills around the globe. There will be an insight within our organization of, hey, this worked really well in this location. Or even just as importantly, my goodness, don't do this. We tried this in this area and it backfired. So that kind of information is really helpful. And as Bill mentioned, we, as part of our membership package, we have technical advisors that we can mobilize to you free of charge that can come in and help you make those right decisions as early on. So we make sure that a response to an incident does last the shortest possible time, that the oil is left in the environment for the shortest possible time and cleared up and cleaned up as quickly as possible. All right, fantastic. So moving on. We're going to touch on mobilizing the response resources. So where are we so far? The incident's happened. The person on site has made an immediate risk assessment. They've observed the situation around them. They've informed people in the immediate vicinity that there has been this issue. They're working towards keeping people as safe as possible. They've made the notifications to their line manager, to the team leader, shift supervisor, operations manager, whoever they are required to notify. And now they're looking around for what resources they have on site to assist them in containing that incident. So the mobilization process. So again, Bill, are you going to talk about this?
I'll talk about this one
today. Thank you. We did talk about this, and I've totally forgotten.
I will talk about this. This is more of my everyday as far as the responder versus the Tristan as our preparedness advisor. So looking at going through the assessments and notification, we've talked about that. And we're now talking about the severity, the location of the incident. And this dictates everything that you might need. If it's a small spill, it could only be a small amount of equipment that you may need, smaller size skimmers, but if it's a large offshore incident, this might involve the mobilization of a lot more assets. Through it, it's looking at your equipment inventory, making sure everything is equipment is accessible, ready, working function, and then also looking at how you're going to get items to certain locations. Having that preparedness and contingency studies done so you understand if an incident happens, what do you have in place? How can you get equipment to your site? Is it somewhere that might be easily accessible by vessel, or is it something that's overland and you have to arrange land transport for? And also, what's this looking at that site when you get there? You have a suitable lie down areas. Is there areas that might be going through? And no situations can be ever be able to be predictable, but you can look at different areas and cases of where you have assets. But also looking at the safety measures for items. That goes back to having that SDS and looking at the product that's being spilled, knowing how the safety of the responders in the field, what kind of PPE is going to need to be required. And PPE should always be the last resort, but it's looking at how we can protect everyone in there. Helmets, gloves, respirators. These are things that go through. And then, of course, on an incident site, active site, you're going to either have large machineries or a mass amount of individuals. We want to make sure that is then controlled. Looking at who needs to come into site, is it just the responders and personnel working, and keeping the general public out for their safety and the safety of everyone responding. And then looking at that incident site setup, looking at the deployment, what's required, and right sizing our responses, making sure we do get the right kind of equipment for the response to do no further harm as we respond to our incidences. We want to make sure that we're doing what's best for both the environment and cleaning up after we've had this incident.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. And one of the things that we wanted to get over with this slide is in many of the drills and exercises and even actual responses that we've attended, people vastly underestimate the amount of time it's going to take to get resources from where they're stored to where they're needed. And again, talking about different responses that we've been on. For my first 7 years at All-Spill Response, I never spent a Christmas or a New Year's Eve at home. And that's not because my family don't like me. That's because we were always out on incidents, because it's at that time of year where there's holidays, their operations are running on skeleton staff. In the northern hemisphere, at least, it's cold and wet outside, so people look out of the office that they're in and think, you know what, I can push off doing my inspections until the weather's cleared up a bit. And by that time, obviously 6 hours later, something bad has happened. So when they pick up the telephone and say, hey, we need resources here now, it's going to take a certain amount of time for people to prepare and get ready. And tied into this, whenever there's an incident, it's always at the same time where the outboard motor for the boat is away being repaired, or we're waiting for a new gasket for a pump or something like that. So we have to come up with alternative strategies to achieve the goal that we want or that we need. So the mobilization process, again, something that's incredibly important to go through in your drills and exercises. And the incident command or incident management system that we follow here in All-Spill Response is really helpful for this, because it allows us to break things down step by step and then have a really clear understanding of these are the resources that we need. This is where they're located. This is how long it's going to take them to get to us. And then this is what we're doing in the meantime. Because doing nothing is not an option. We have to do something. And those drills, those exercises, the understanding the mobilization process really helps us do that. Now, with this next slide, what we're going to talk about is this basic site risk assessment. I love working in the oil and gas industry. It's one of my favorite things in the world ever. Only slightly beaten by my previous job, which was military. I was British military for many years and US military as well. And again, a lot of my friends are ex-military. But if we have got one fault when faced with an emergency, is we rush on in there without any concern. We have a goal in mind and we're like pit bulls. But the problem with that is if we don't take 2 minutes, even 30 seconds prior to carrying out a task, we can put not only ourselves, but the people that we are working with and those around us in danger. So in the past 17 years, in the past 45 years, actually, All Spill Response has been responding to incidents. We've distilled the basic information that we need to know about an area we are going to respond to down into this risk assessment document. And I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, Tristan, you've just been talking for the past 40 minutes about the importance of when there's an incident, making the right decisions, taking action, getting ahead of the incident. And now you're telling us, oh, wait, but sit down, you need to complete a form. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. For training and exercises, forms are fantastic because they put the right questions in our mind. For the vast majority of oil spill responses that you're dealing with, the small incidents, you'll be able to do this in your mind. But the only way you'll be able to do this in your mind is if you've done it 5, 10, or for me, 150 times on paper before. So those questions are just inbuilt into your psyche. So what does this form cover? What information are we looking at? So very basic, right at the top, the where, the when, spilt product type, and estimated amount of release. We've spoken about this before. We can be a little bit varied when it comes to estimated amount or product. But if we know the area that we are working in, the size of the impacted area, we can put that in as well. Okay. So basic information. And next we're going to move on. We're going to look at hazards. So what out there can cause us harm? And this can be anything from slips, trips and falls, could be vapors, it could be local population. With the best will in the world, if you pollute an area where people live, they're not going to be very happy about it. So is there a risk of that? Is it difficult to get to? Is access a problem? And Bill will back me up on this. I mean, Bill, the amount of instances and responses you've been to, how many times have you been able to drive in your vehicle, park in a nice car park, walk down a gravelled road, and there's the area you're responding to? Or are you more likely crawling through mangroves, mud up to your knees?
Oh, Tristan, well, it's definitely crawling through those mangroves, those muddy areas, trying to get to remote stretches of shoreline that no one's really been on in 10, 20 years. And it's also could be going over mountainsides, cliff sides to get to parts of the shoreline where it's inaccessible and such. So it's always having those passive perceptions and knowing if it's hard for you to get there and you're trained and well and can climb it, how is someone going to get through there in proper PPE to then collect heavy oil and bring it back out? So that's also part of your preparedness and into it.
Absolutely. And you touch on a great point, which is the final element. It's all very well us gathering this information, but like we said at the start, communication is key. And a big element of this document is the planning and briefing aid. So it's typically our emergency response team leader or safety man who makes this risk assessment before everything starts, because the rest of the team, they're unloading the equipment, or they're getting the equipment ready, or they're putting their PPE on. But before they actually go into that recovery zone, we want to brief them, make sure that everybody is aware, hey, this is the area we're working in. These are the risks. If something goes wrong, this is how we're raising the alarm. This is how we're going to respond. But the big way that we do this is that area at the end, the planning and briefing aid. It's a sketch. I like sketches because that's the way my brain works, but depending on the people in your team, I know others are more happy with verbal instructions. I've even seen people, when we've been on beachheads, do sand models on the actual beach in the sand. Elmer's really good at this. He's a duty manager over in Fort Lauderdale. He could be a sandcastle building champion. But any way we can get that message across to make people aware, these are the risks, these are the problems that we face. Okay, I see we're quite tight on time, but so what have we covered today then? We've covered the first 3 steps on these immediate response actions. So the incident's occurred, or the strong potential of an incident has occurred. We've made our initial assessment. We've done a situational awareness check. We've raised the alarm. We've made our primary notifications. And as we said, the difference between raising the alarm and primary notifications is raising the alarm tends to be verbal, the people immediately around you who could be at risk of something bad happening to them if they stay in that location. The notifications, this is where we follow our procedures or policies on site or at our facility or within our organization. Who are we going to tell? How are we going to tell them? What are we going to tell them? And more importantly, what do we expect them to do with that information? And then we had a quick look at the mobilizing response resources. This is stuff that equipment we typically have on site. We need to understand that it is going to take time for the equipment to get to where we need it. And also the importance, again, of safety. And hopefully the big vein of safety is run all the way through this webinar. So before we physically do something, the importance of doing that risk assessment. On paper, if we have time, in our heads, if we're experienced and we know what we're doing. And drills and exercises are a massive, massive part of building that experience. So in the next webinar in a month, what are we going to be doing? So we're going to be looking at or finishing off with the mobilizing response resources. These are the external resources, our contractors, all spill response organizations such as OSRL. We're going to be looking at establishing an operations center. So the management of an incident. Where's the management team going to sit? Remember when we spoke about that initial assessment or reporting notification form, we said we don't need to know all the information. It's highly unlikely that we do. We're going to look at how we keep that updated, how we spread the information as more information, as more knowledge about the incident becomes available to us. We're going to look at how we communicate that out through our ever-expanding incident management and emergency response team structure. And then we're going to look at setting goals and assigning tasks, because our main aim is to take the knowledge that we have, turn that knowledge into action. We want to make sure that the actions that we undertake are going to, as much as possible, effectively and efficiently deal with that incident. And the goals and tasks that we set at this early stage are vital to us. You know, we wouldn't, if we're driving down the road and we have a puncture on our vehicle tire, we wouldn't spend the first 5 minutes crawling around back on the freeway looking for the nail or the screw that's caused that puncture. We would put all our attention onto fixing our wheel. Far too often in these early elements of response, we see the management team focus on why this has happened and not what do we need to do to deal with what's happened. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next webinar. Okay, thank you very, very much for your time. Please, if you have any questions, I'm just having a quick look through the chat now. There's been a number of questions about, can you send me these slides or the slide deck? So this webinar will be available on our website, on the All Spill Response website. So you will be able to see the slides again. I think you can download them from there as well. It typically takes about 5 to 7 days for the recording to be put up on the website. So if you keep in contact with us, we will notify you when the recording of this webinar is available. There's another question that says, in the oil and gas industry, we look at oil as the primary spill, but we know from production that oil is usually laced with corrosive. Yes, yeah, fantastic question. Really good question. Yes. Yeah, again, this boils down to our basic risk assessment, the product type. What are we dealing with here? Oil is hazardous enough as it is, but you start adding additional chemicals in, yeah, that can make response challenging, absolutely challenging. Yeah. Designated vehicle, what is ideal to reduce time loading up equipment? Again, that's a good question. In my experience, Bill, please feel free to chime in here. Having a vehicle as a dedicated response tool doesn't really work, because people will take that vehicle and, I've just got to nip to so-and-so for a certain time. So when you need it, that vehicle isn't there. What I found works better is trailerized response equipment, obviously depending on your facility where you're responding to.
Yeah, I would say exactly,
Yeah,
Tristan. It's having things in trailers, having things pre-positioned. That's always going to be the better option. If you have it in a truck, someone's going to drive off in the truck, go nip down to the store to grab something. But you have it in a trailer, any vehicle that has the ball hitch can take that trailer and go with it. You're not looking for one specific vehicle.
absolutely. Yeah. So something that's adaptable, and trailers work really well for this, or packages that can be lifted and put in the back of a pickup truck if it's a small incident. There's another question: what tools are available to determine the type of oil spilled if the source is unknown? So chemical analysis, there's a lot of laboratory testing that we can do on that. Again, we want the focus during this initial response element to be on dealing with the incident. We're going to find out the chemical composition and the type of oil and possible source later on. But if we do an effective risk assessment first, we can ensure that the responders have the PPE for what we think is there and start dealing with the spill as it stands. Okay, how are we doing for time? We have 1 minute left. Okay. Let's see. Let's do this one question on the screen there quickly. Sorry. Our contact details. Please keep this conversation going. Feel free to reach out to myself, to Bill, or the duty managers in general. Visit our website. You can ask us questions and keep this conversation going. Like I said at the beginning, response is all about relationships. The more you know, and the more people you know, the bigger your network, the more chance you have to respond effectively to an incident.
Yeah, and there's a small typo with my last name on the screen, but I will put my email in the chat for you guys.
I am so sorry, Bill. That's totally me.
Oh, it's proper English versus the Irish heritage. But it's all right. It's there. It happens all the time. I'm used to it.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Sorry, yeah, why not I? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
You.
Tristan, Bill, I didn't catch. Did you give us the date for the next webinar?
Let's have a quick check. I don't think I did.
Okay.
Let me have a quick check here a second. Oh, let's stop sharing the screen. There you go. That's better.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't take a mental vacation while you were talking.
No problems, no problems. People often do that when I'm talking, but no, you didn't in this case. That's 13.
While you're looking for that, so there's a few people asking if there's going to be a certificate of completion or attendance after the class.
Yeah, sorry, no, not for this webinar. Typically, we only do certificates when there has been some kind of question and answer session, because we like to make sure that that people have or understand the information and taken on board the information that we've given. Now, if people are interested in getting certifications or other qualifications, then we do have a number of training courses available. A free one, for example, if you go on our website, you'll see an introductory course to oil spill response, where you do get a certificate. You just put in your details, and then you can become at least initially certified for the response. And what we've got, webinar 2, finally we found it, is scheduled for the 11th of July.
Okay. I will look for the notice. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Take care, gents.
Oh, and another question: how to arrest an uncontrolled spill? There are 450,000 ways of arresting an uncontrolled spill. It all comes down to your risk assessment and preparedness plan. So you do a risk assessment of what you're facing, and then you look at the most effective method to deal with that incident. So there is no single way that we could sit here and tell you, oh, you need a capping stack, or you need a pipe clamp, or whatever it is. It's very, very scenario specific. How to deal with oil spills that are heavier than water. Oh, fantastic. And again, yes, I have dealt with spills, not oil spills that have been heavier than water. This was actually a sugar syrup compound that was spilt in Hawaii. It is very difficult. Again, a lot of planning goes into that. And the way that we responded to that is we had divers with airlifts, which is like a large tube. They went down and had to suck up the sediment in the bottom. It was quite a small spill, so that helped us. But yeah, as soon as product sinks, it becomes a much more complex response, especially when you start using divers and machinery that operates below the surface of the water. Again,
Yeah.
you know, Phil?
We've dealt with it on spills where the oil sank over time afterwards. And so it's one of those things of you're sending divers out to try to locate, but it's needle in a haystack kind of looking. But this is where it's now combined with sand and shells and things. So you end up having it wash on the shore. So you're collecting it from a shoreline over time. And you're trying to guess where it may be offshore because it can sit in rocky coralline or hard rock bottoms and in small pockets. So it's very hard to kind of just have a one-off, this is how you deal with the solution. It is, as we've said, very scenario specific.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's good research that came out of Macondo from the Gomiri Institute, where they talked about sunken oil coming in over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see now that there's quite a few questions about specific response types or specific response actions to certain spill types. And it's very difficult for us to give you a comprehensive answer because each scenario is different. And like I said, please feel free to reach out to us with more information. Otherwise the answer you'll get, for example, how do you deal with a spill that evaporates easily, like PMS there? Well, air monitoring, it doesn't deal with it at all, but it is vital to the response because we are not sending people into somewhere that's going to kill them. So,
yeah.
But we would really need to know a little bit more information before we can come up with hey, this is your response that you need to carry out. If you know there is a spill coming, is there use or something to see how big the oil spill is and how fast it is moving? Absolutely, there is. Yes, we do a lot of predictive modeling using various computer-based scenarios that allow us to do that not just on water, but also on land. So again, based upon the scenario that you are facing, we can predict what we think, what we assume, although I don't like that word, would happen in the event of an incident.
Yeah,
I find
many
this
things that
topic
you can
very
look at.
interesting. Oh, thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, it's very interesting when it comes to doing the modeling for stuff because it really is factor dependent, product dependent. There's a lot of different factors into it. So, and at best, a good guess based on information put in. And as more information comes in through it, you can refine how that looks. So it's one of those things of like you can give a good estimate, but it's never going to be real known and true facted by what's happening in real life.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, guys, that's us. We're right on time. Please feel free to reach out. Look for Bill. Are you on LinkedIn?
I am.
Okay, perfect. I look for Bill and myself on LinkedIn. My contact details are all there as well. So, and also if you go on the OSRL website, you'll be able to reach us directly. Bill, thank you very much. Nicole, really appreciate you and your support this morning. We look forward to seeing everybody on the 11th of July.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for